So Gabrielle said, crazy Zeke didn't make the top 5. He played injured last season. That is true. Behind an offensive line that got 2 QBs injured in Prescott and Dalton. Vish, does that sound familiar?
I don't know what he's compared. Maybe the Niners offensive line. I just think it's just beyond the offensive line, right? I had Nick Chubb at 5, and Nick Chubb plays behind the best offensive line in the NFL. He plays by far behind the best offensive line of these other backs we name. Like, you brought up Saquon Barkley, right? Like, if we were thinking of offensive line, Saquon Barkley's offensive line that he's had to run behind and Nick Chubb's offensive line that he's had to run behind don't even compare. But you also have to look at the player itself and forget injuries. In 2020, 2019, Zeke also was lacking that explosive first step that he once had. Runs that Alvin Cook and Nick Chubb and Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara would take for 80 yards, Zeke was taking for 20 yards. So that if he doesn't have that explosiveness, he's not as powerful, I would say, as he once was. You know, he's not breaking tackles. He's not as sudden, so he's taking more bigger hits. Like, before, Zeke used to be like these other guys, really tough to hit because he had this subtle quickness to him. So you couldn't get a clean shot on him, but he would actually just plow you. I think Zeke is missing that now too. And then the other thing with Zeke, and the other thing for me, is he had a fumbling problem last year.
Yeah.
Great running backs can't fumble.
He fumbled 6 times.
Yeah.
That is a lot for – I mean, I remember, you know, AP was one of the guys who was that good, but he fumbled too. I wanted to add, too, with the explosiveness, he obviously, you know, plays a very, like, brutal and, you know, demanding on the body style of football where he just lowers his shoulder and will try to run who's ever there over. You remember his rookie year when he was going with Cam Chancellor and the Legion of Boom was still kind of there, and in that matchup, like, he was getting the better of Cam Chancellor, and, like, actually when he would put his shoulder down, like, he would move him back, and you just don't see that. But I think his body's wearing down a little bit, and the lack of explosiveness is definitely, like, concerning to me, where, like, any of those guys on the top 5 that we mentioned, they have really, really good explosiveness. Zeke does not. The last 3 years, these are his longest runs. 2018, 41 yards. 2019, 33 yards. 2020, 31 yards. His longest run was 31 yards. Now, he is more of a grinded out type of guy, but all the guys aforementioned in our list all had that ability to, you know, take it the yard, take it 50, 60 yards. And that's where I'm like, okay, this is kind of concerning, the fact that after his first contract, he's already slowing down a little bit. And once Prescott was gone, I mean, like, I understand your offense isn't as good, but to be, like, actually, like, bad, like, their offense was horrible, and he was not really, you know, doing much to help. And then for Tony Pollard comes in against the Niners, and the dude just looks like the reincarnation of Barry Sanders for no good reason. Like, Pollard played way better that one game than Zeke did in the majority of the games once the quarterbacks went down. So that's concerning to me too.
It's an eye test thing too. Like, if you go back and watch Zeke Elliott this season, when you watch Tony Pollard behind the same offensive line, it looks different. Pollard looks more explosive, and he looks like he's seeing holes better than Zeke Elliott. And the other thing with Zeke Elliott is that, like, you bring up this offensive line thing, and obviously their run scheme isn't, like, overly creative and all of that. But you take rookie year or second year Zeke Elliott and you put him in the same situation behind the Dallas Cowboys, they don't finish 4-12. Rookie year Zeke Elliott, you would have been able to, you give him the ball 25 times and he would have just won you one of those games because he would just wear a defense out and he would get one run where he could break it and all of that. Zeke Elliott is just not the same player that he was in college in his rookie year and his second year. And it's just what happens. I mean, Todd Gurley 2 years ago was as good as Zeke Elliott, and both of them were probably the 2 best running backs in the NFL. Now look, same thing with Le'Veon Bell. So yeah, a lot of this is obviously subject to change, but I don't think there's any way Zeke Elliott is even in the top 6 or 7 backs in the NFL, let alone the 5. To me, he's not better than Saquon Barkley, who wasn't in my 5, and he's not better than Aaron Jones, who wasn't in my 5. And hell, I wouldn't even say he's better than Joe Mixon, who was also not in my 5.
Maybe Josh Jacobs, you could throw a name in there. There's other guys too that are in that same realm with him, but I'm with you. I love Zeke. I really did. there was a running joke in my fantasy league that for some reason I always ended up with him. It was like 3 years running, and I like this past year I traded for him because I had to get him, of course. But obviously, just like it's watching him because I'd watch him a lot because obviously he's like your number one pick and stuff, and he's just progressively gotten a little worse. And that's just kind of how running backs are, and why teams are maybe hesitant to pay them. When you look at the best running backs in the league 3 years ago, your list would probably be like David Johnson, Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, Zeke. Those guys aren't – I wouldn't even say near the top 5 anymore, which is – it's just kind of sad too because you're like, wow, like those were guys that you loved watching, and now, due to injuries and their bodies wearing down, they're just not there anymore.
I agree. I 100% agree. Yeah. I think that's ultimately what it is. And with Derrick, with Derrick Henry, we might see it soon. With Dalvin Cook, we could see it soon. With Christian McCaffrey, we could see it soon too. So we'll see.